Hamish Oakley-Browne, and I'm the director of Te Kowhai Print Trust, which is an open access print studio situated in the back of the Quarry Arts Centre. We have schools and community groups and adult classes. We also run like an open access studio where people can come in and use our facilities to further their projects.
Cool. So I am Kim Newall, and I am part of AwhiWorld with my partner Maggie Buxton, and we do many things, but we kind of like kind of activating places, people, and spaces, and kind of making things better than what they are, and give people hope in what we do. And we often use not exclusively, but sometimes technology and other forms as well to do that. Working on what have we nicknamed it, called it?
We've called it Emerging Print Lab, and I think primarily that's because it's kind of cross-disciplinary. It's got emerging technologies and some tradition.
So I guess we have been using emerging technology of 3D printing for a start.
Yeah.
And I guess what's your experience with 3D printing?
Well, this project was zero. However, I think I can kind of wind back to my first experience of working with AwhiWorld, where I was introduced to some more cross-disciplinary practice, which is with the Whangarei Fringe Festival, I think 2020, where we combined some printmaking that I'd done, some traditional woodcuts, and then used emerging technologies of
so that was augmented reality.
that's the word I was searching for.
And augmented reality is putting a layer on our own reality, and in the case with working with Hamish, we used some stickers which he had designed for the Fringe Festival, and then through an app I'd animated 3D creatures which came alive. So you had to look at the sticker through the app, and then a virtual creature would be on top of the sticker, kind of hanging out. So that's an example of, I guess, mixing old technology and new technology.
Yeah, and I guess that's really what got me interested in collaborating with Kim and Maggie and AwhiWorld, was that there's it also fits in with print tradition. Because I was aware that traditionally printmaking always invites new technologies into its practice to move forward, and I was really grounded in old printmaking technologies back to engraving, etching, and woodcut. And the opportunity to then bring in new technologies as a cross-disciplinary way to approach printmaking seemed really exciting. And then we met again at the Collaborations New Zealand event out at Whangarei Heads, and we collaborated on a project there which combined both our interests. Kim was doing 3D printing, which I knew nothing about, except for what I'd seen in the media, and I needed a problem solved, basically, and Kim thought that the 3D printer would be a way to resolve the problem.
Well, I mean, from my point of view, I guess I went through design school like in the 90s, did a little bit of printmaking, and did some DIY printmaking. Like none of this type of fancy like press thing. It's just like getting a piece of wood, get some nails, make some marks, roll it up, and then end up with kind of digitizing it. So I was quite keen on finding a way to use the 3D printer. I was, I guess, using you as an excuse to kind of execute some ideas as well within the environment of collaborations.
Yeah, so I mean, I had no idea how it would work, but eventually, what Kim produced was a 3D printing plate, which is let's call it a relief plate, so a 3D relief plate that I was then able to ink up in a traditional sense and print with an etching press. And the 3D printer had kind of done some kind of weird additive thing that I didn't really understand the basics of, but Kim did, and got a result in the end that then just set my head spinning. And I guess that brings us into how we got to work with the Incubator Project.
Yeah, so the Incubator Project was a year-long project where we were working with organisations and people in Te Kowhai Northland to kind of mentor them and kind of ideally getting them to gain some more skills which they could share with their communities, and that's why it's been quite a good partnership with Hamish with that, so that it wasn't just about activating Hamish so he could do some printmaking and be ultra cool, which he probably doesn't need our help to do. But that's more to kind of share that knowledge with a wider group so that other people could be empowered or, by doing that, and also making for print Te Kowhai and Print Trust kind of cool and up its profile as well.
Yeah.
As well as it's a good chance to have some fun. I guess one of the one of the advantages of what we're doing is that it's been very enjoyable, as well as kind of doing research and gaining knowledge that we can share in different ways for people.
Yeah, and I think, for us here at Te Kowhai, working with AwhiWorld really solved some big problems for us because, we had all these really old, hundreds of years old technologies down pat, but we really didn't have our modern technologies, which really supports us to work with young people primarily up to date. And Kim really had the understanding of how to put together a digital practice for our studio, but then also became really apparent how big a role a 3D printer can actually play in traditional printmaking.
So a few prints on, we noticed that the aesthetic was quite different than from let's say a lino cut or from a wood cut, and that my first kind of take on that was just like, is that problematic that it doesn't look like a lino wood cut? And then I guess we got used to the quality, the aesthetic that the 3D print kind of produced, which had its own
Characteristic.
Aesthetic. Well, I want to say affordances because that's kind of a term you'd use in academia, but
Well, for me, once I sort of got past the idea this was exactly the look that I was looking for, and I did more research across innovations across history and print culture, I realized that occurred to me that all print technologies have a slight difference. Engraving that was taken over by etching, the two techniques look quite different, and the differences in their look is comparable to the look that you might get from a lino if comparing it to a 3D printed plate, or if you look at lead type and compare it to how a wood type prints. And the realization then that in fact to embrace the way the artifacts that are produced when you 3D print an object really help me settle into the idea that this is an emerging technology that can be utilized in a traditional sense, but has a character of its own, which I found really exciting. All of a sudden, I was like, oh my God, it reads authentic to itself. Where it's not I'm not forcing it to try and pretend to be something else.
So, in this kind of world now, the digital world and the world of online and etc., why is this technique relevant? I mean, it's an open question, and I guess which we're still trying to think about. But I mean, why why even do it when we can just put stuff online, or we can just get some lino from an art shop and carve something. What's the
I think there's two really interesting points there, and one of them is this crossover between the analog and the digital, and my personal feelings of how important it is to keep analog alive. That people still want to be able to do stuff with their hands. That art making, has a tradition in the handmade, and keeping that alive, but also embracing new technologies. I think that's kind of an exciting thing. Why would you do this? And I think for me, why wouldn't you just carve a lino? People are going to argue, oh, hey, why would I 3D print a plate when I could carve a lino? Or and one of the important things for me is a really problem-solving mechanism, which printmakers will understand. Primarily, printmaking is a problem-solving thing. Is, for example, type. And when you're publishing, you need, we've got letterpress, which utilizes a specific kind of block, and you're limited by sort of the number of fonts that you maybe have in your letterpress collection, or the amount of wood type. And what an additive process like the 3D printing plate allows you to do is very easily print a font plate, like I like to call it a linotype machine, in the same tradition that a traditional linotype would be used. You can very easily program in a set of text, and have a relief plate made up with your choice of font available anywhere on the internet, and not limited by the collection of lead type or wood type that you might have.
So you can make your own fonts. And so, I mean, this is probably an in-joke, but what's the most likely thing to happen when you first do that? Of printing the mirror, I guess.
Oh well, you're going to print it back. You're going to print it back to front. You've got to flip your image, which we didn't do all the time.
Probably every time we go to do it, we forget to flip the image.
Yeah. That it has same character as traditional relief printmaking or intaglio printmaking. That anything in type is actually in reverse.
And I guess one of the advantages is that we don't have to carve it out, or we can just put our machine to work to fix that issue as well, over kind of redoing a whole new block by spending hours carving it.
And I think people are going to argue both ways with this, but printmaking's always sought to use innovation to speed up the process. And if you go back through history and look at why they chose etching over an engraving. Because publishing demanded that an economy and a speed was part of the process, and so I think utilizing the 3D printer to make these relief plates or intaglio plates really fits into that tradition as well, where there's an economy of speed, because now you can fit image and type really quickly and have a plate change or make adjustments, which really allows kind of an economical use of your time. It's going to speed up some home publishing process.
So I guess in, let's say, the old days, but traditionally print was quite commercial and was probably all about money and speed and numbers. And with the digital world, I guess printmaking's more of experience. So in some ways, we're making the experience a lot more accessible to people to be able to do printmaking with some of the tools that they are already familiar with digitally as well. So with a 3D printing, you aren't going to print hundreds or thousands of books with it.
No.
Where traditionally, there's, I guess, that kind of So it's I guess it's put into the hands of the creative so they can do what they want with it and explore it within the means of their capability.
And I think that served really two purposes for us here at Te Kowhai, which is one that we have a lot of young people come through here, and they're really familiar with an iPad, for example, and digital technologies like that. And they also have some fear around drawing, where that might not exist when they're utilizing a medium like the iPad. And so being able to have a system by where someone can draw on a digital device that they're familiar with, they've had schooling with, that maybe isn't such a barrier to their interest, that seem more excited, and then bring them back to tradition through the 3D printing plate, seem really exciting.
So Emerging Print Lab. I guess we came up with the name fairly recently, but
Yeah,
the idea of, and this is kind of a personal thing with emergence, or the name of emergence, is the idea of you take two things which are unrelated and you make a brand new thing from it, and the idea of kind of using digital media and print media, and when you smash it together, what are the new things that we can generate or make from that, which are impossible without with just some printmaking or in the digital. So I guess that's kind of an interest I've got. So I guess with that 3D printer, with printmaking, we're kind of mimicking the process a little bit, but it's developing its own style as well through how we generate work. And
I think, the Emerging Print Lab has allowed the research into this technology, has allowed us to then explore the spectrum on which we can use this technology, like most printmaking technologies, works for this but doesn't work for this. And we've been really exploring the length and breadth of what we can do using the 3D printer as an additive, relief, and intaglio print making process to do different things. We're exploring ideas around halftone and mark making and brushes and hand drawing, and what are the limitations of this additive printmaking process. What can it do? And I guess Kim's been exploring some of your interests around this technology.
yeah, so I guess been looking at, I guess, bringing digital work alive. So been using what's called live coding, or essentially images generated by code and AI, and then bringing them back into the physical world and finding out how they work. One of the latest experiments I've been doing is printing onto OHP, or transparency, and then using an overhead projector to project it back, which relates to another project. So kind of essentially printing onto something clear, but just kind of playing around, and also been playing around with generating images which I can then use a camera to feed back into the digital world for live performance. So kind of,
Yeah, so you're taking your analog printmaking and then, in some cases, dragging it back into the computer to have a new life as a digital artwork as well.
yes, and potentially bring it back out again. I guess one of the projects which we've been quite keen on as well is, which I think we've both got personal interests in, is kind of publishing of how we can use our experiments that we've been doing together and do small runs, and or do a master book, and then we can publish it digitally as well.
Yeah.
Through sharing our personal creative practice, as well as our learnings through the process that we've learned. Personal interests in publishing, or one of the projects which will come out of what we're doing.
Yeah. So I definitely, in my personal practice, I really love that that sweet spot in where printmaking as an art form intersects with publishing and print as a as an industry, and in what ways does it can you creatively subvert and exist in that space, and so we've started a project, I think, that really looks into both those areas, and we could call it an artist book.
Yes, I guess it's still emerging as we go a little bit because I come from a kind of a graphic and design background originally over my training, so I've got a strong interest in that as well as kind of the creativity within that. So part of the idea that it could be very functional but also very creative as well. So we're, I guess, kind of playing that ground as we kind of put it together.
And you have an interest in old specimen books too, and I guess this is some of what the project embodies.
Just old books in general. And there's in the digital world, it's quite amazing now that lots of stuff's been digitized that was held up in archives or which you would never have access to, partly because you needed to go to the archive, but also you didn't actually know that things existed because they were like behind locked doors, and if you didn't know that certain type of specimen book didn't exist, then you couldn't ask to see it.
Yeah.
And now by going online, there's archive.org have got this amazing collection of old books which are out of copyright, which you can look at, which includes lots of specimen books and other types of kind of scientific illustrations and stuff, which it probably relates to the project a little bit as well.
And I love those things as well.
Mm.
So I think what's happened now is we've used those twin interests to start a project inside the Emerging Print Lab, where we are documenting the specimens or pieces that we develop through this print technology. I like the ecosystem.
Yeah, I guess what we're doing is
exploring the ecosystem that has that's emerging out of this process, seeing what really lives in there, documenting it, identifying it, and also with the idea that we share it with other people.
Yeah, and also I kind of believe that as we're doing experiments, we aren't just seeing what's there. I believe, I have creatures and stuff that pop up that they also choose to come and say hello, or we both believe in mistakes in our practice, so it's kind of like discovering what they are. It's like the technique is talking to us as well, and that often we aren't just forcing ourselves upon the printmakers. It's like we have to make this work. It's more like, what happens if I just do this? Use this ink, or this print didn't quite work. We'll just put through. What will that tell us about what we're doing?
Yeah, and I think I love that about the whole process, because I had quite high ideals when I first started experimenting with the process, and had a lot of failures about how to make a plate that was going to print in the way I did. And I think in those failures, I really got taught something about the way the process works, but also that the outcomes of these these things I'd labelled as failures were actually part of exploring the environment that we was kind of being introduced to.
Often find with techniques like this is that you have a vision in your head. So it's just like, I want to print some type. I'll print it out at 9 point. That should work perfectly, and because of the nature of what we're doing, it often doesn't work because in this case it was all the lines were too thin together, so you have to kind of adapt as you go, so that you can't always produce what you want originally, but then you find or think of other ways that you can produce the work.
Yeah, and also relaxing into that process and letting the work emerge naturally out of the experiment. I found really enjoyable in the end. Once I kind of let go of my sort of control, my feelings of wanting to control the process and letting the process emerge itself, and then some really exciting combinations of things really started to emerge and open my eyes.
So I guess we've been talking about our own practices a little bit. In the big picture, I guess we're hoping that we will share this out again as once we do it, I guess by example and doing some good practice, we will have some good things that people can look at, and also it builds our knowledge so that we can.
Yeah, I think my attitude has so significantly changed with the idea of utilizing technology like a 3D printer, where I now I call my 3D printer, a robot, and I call it a printmaker's friend because I feel like the printmaking ecosystem as a whole, there's a lot of value in bringing this process into the printmaking ecosystem. There's a lot of things, a lot of joy, excitement, and creativity that printmakers are going to be able to utilize this technology for. And I think sharing what we've discovered about the technology is going to hopefully inspire people to pick it up and add to it.
And I guess by doing this interview and doing stuff online and at times we'll do workshops so that we can share that knowledge locally and probably elsewhere as well.
Yeah.
Inspired, or what probably got us on the track of this was there's Open Print Project who 3D printed an etching press.
Oh yeah.
Which idea of that again was to make print making process kind of accessible.
Yeah, yep. And I think in the same view as the Open Press guys did, where they were like, okay, we're just going to give this away for free, and hopefully encourage the practice and the process of it on the way. We're going to essentially try and encourage people to pick up this kind of technology and utilize it in the same way.
And I guess immediately we've kind of talked about possibly using the intaglio process, which is instead of ink sitting on the surface, it sits on the gaps of the 3D printing, see if we can get results from that.
Yeah.
As well as from actual plate making, and you probably through other means as well, kind of looked through other processes. I mean, there's CNC and laser, but there's probably other ways of using technology to interface as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I love the idea where you're using multiple different methods to create your artwork. And this really represents a tool that you can insert into any of the other printmaking processes to support, the expansion of what you're trying to do, and maybe reduce some of the limitations.
And potentially, as I see it as well, is that as we go forward, there's also of what I guess using the printmaking, or using the technology to do print making, but also how to use technology to publish the work, or to explore that as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think
through, obviously you can digitize stuff and then turn into digital books, but how far can you kind of take that through into, your work could end up in a virtual world where you wear VR goggles and you experience it through that, or you your avatar becomes your printmaking.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm 600 years behind you, Kim. You have to drag me forward into these new places. But I think the expanded field of print is what many people are calling it. This is a real hotbed of innovation and exploration. That's really exciting. It's exciting for art and it's exciting for printmaking and technologies. Certainly the AwhiWorld Incubator Project taught me how full of, I'm looking for the word, full of promise that working in a cross-disciplinary process becomes, and can really knock you out of any stagnation or where you're maybe stuck, because there's a lot there. There's a lot there in that crossover.
And it's very emergent and interesting of what can be produced within that space. And I mean, possibly things like printmaking, they have very strong traditions, so you can get stuck in reproducing stuff as well. People do, or keeping a tradition alive by sticking to the rules, and I guess we're kind of breaking those rules to see what else you can do with it as well, which is also
and I think this
a
is
valid point.
Yeah, and this is what's going on in the wider ecology of printmaking is people are exploring these areas. They want to know what's going on out there. I want to know what's going on out there as far as the next steps forward, because I heard some guy on the radio recently and he's saying we had the golden era of print back in 1640, and then we've had re-emergences of when these kind of technologies have been really popularized. But he just pointed out that we're 3D printing hearts, and that this is a new golden era of print if we can come to some kind of acceptance that these new emergent technologies are also printmaking. They're also art. They're also science and technology, and they're working in a space where all these things collide in a really exciting kind of place.
And I guess being a non-printmaker, I find printmaking really fascinating and also accessible through what we're doing, and I guess through my other practices, trying to add that through the process so that it's and I guess sometimes I don't have a kind of preconception of what it should be as well. It's just like, really printing, I don't think I should be using a certain type of wood to mimic a Japanese wood print. It's just like, oh, I've got this digital thing. How will that look if I can bring it to the real world and just see what happens? So it kind of breaks.
Breaks down some barriers and certainly solves some problems for printmaking, as far as I can tell.
I mean, I guess the exciting thing in this world is that there's so many technologies which are very accessible now for us to use, and just general public in general as well. That I guess one of the reasons why we've also been playing with a 3D printer is that you can just go down to a local shop and buy it. And that most people with a lot of disposable income could probably justify it if you're an artist and that you use it. Talking about hundreds of dollars, not like thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. So
it's certainly an accessible technology that that you can get into at a really low level and still participate in it. And what I really love about using digital through the 3D printer as your medium for making your plates is that then you take them to be analog. I mean, I still want to be analog in my practice, and we've got a printmaking studio where we've got printing presses. We want the presses to be used, and we want to use those, keep those print traditions intact, but also allow the access to come into the analog through whatever means is possible. Not everyone wants to pick up a chisel and carve a block. Certainly, there's dangers and barriers there that perhaps this technology can circumvent. Certainly, very young people can have an experience where they make one of these printing plates and print it in an analog form. It's an exciting development. We're going to be delivering a series of workshops and putting together a publication.
Yeah, I mean, for a start, we are quite passionate about what we're doing, and we are very keen on sharing it with the world.
Yeah.
And also, we're probably quite generous in what we've been doing as well. So we want people to take ownership of what they do and learn and make their own new things from what they might learn, or just by being inspired through using, let's say, alternative print processes, or hopefully it won't be alternative in the future as well.
Yeah.
Well, we're starting a revolution.
Well, certainly there were many engravers 600 years ago who were like, who are these etchers and what use are they? And and we're unsettled by it. But then, of course, we know now that etching is part of print tradition. And in the same way, I believe that using a 3D printer to make these additive relief plates is gonna become a part of printmaking tradition. It's just going to slot in alongside all these other technologies across history.
Yeah, and possibly some other techniques that we come up with as we develop our emergent print lab, that we aren't just, 3D printer won't be just king. There will be other ways and things that we can do, which we'll be really excited about exploring.
Yeah.
And also, personally, very interested in what you do with the print as well afterwards, in the hybrid between the real and the analog, or the kind of the digital and the physical. And I guess with how the world's going at the moment, we won't even know what's digital and what's not in the future. And I guess there's, we're bringing the things together and see how that kind of lands as well. So you might be part cyborg, and you might be already, as far as I know. Just looking at your glasses, is there a layer of thing, or you had some operation? But the discussions that we have about things being separated
will be totally different.
Be totally different because they, be kind of irrelevant at that point. I guess with the passion of printmaking, you're hoping that printmaking will still be part of that discussion.
Well, I mean,
in the future, and it won't just be a relic.
Yeah, and maybe it's going to turn out that way. I know the print community itself cherishes both the tradition and the development of innovative print processes. So I'm sure there's always going to be a community of people that are really interested in these kind of processes, but certainly the question pops up about how relevant analog processes are going to be in the future. For me, I hope that analog processes are going to fall into larger relevance as people want to experience things outside the digital realm.
Yeah, and I guess from my personal opinion is that there's emergence between, so they are going to come together a lot more. So we can't get rid of the physical. With advance of even with, let's say, AI and things being digitized, we as humans will probably want things to be more physical again, and we'll see intelligence is slightly different. So it means that that they will. Yeah, we aren't just going to be digitized. I think there's going to be this amazing space where everything kind of exists, but the boundaries will be quite blurred.
Yeah, and I think that that's what these kind of technologies, especially this one here, really represents a little foray into that space where both the digital is really strong and the analog, and both are need each other and also grow out of each other.